Hi, everyone. I'm Erica Palmer, Planning Manager for the City of Sherwood. I just want to thank you for your attendance for our CAC meeting number 4 this evening. With that, I think I'm just going to hand it off to Joe Dills from Angelo Planning Group to lead our conversation tonight. I do know that a couple of folks couldn't be in attendance this evening. They just had a busy week with kind of like school starting and the start of the fall and all the transitions going on right after the holiday week. So with that, Joe, are you ready?
Yeah. Evening, everybody. Good to see you. Let's just start with a couple of housekeeping items. We did include a meeting summary from your third meeting. Did anybody have any comments or corrections on the meeting summary? Okay, then I'm going to take that as consensus to move it ahead, and that'll be in the record as written. The first item we have before we get to plan concepts is closure on your discussion last time of updated vision, goals, and evaluation criteria. And I'm going to work from the packet, if that's okay, and go ahead and share my screen. Bear with me a sec. Okay. So, Erica, are you seeing the vision, goals, and criteria up?
Yes.
Okay. Let me try. Oh, that helped. Okay. For some reason, my computer is not fully cooperating with seeing everybody, but so help me recognize folks, Erica, as we go ahead. So, the briefing on this is you had a great discussion of the vision words and the intent and a couple of priorities. We have made those edits into this document. Some of them were verbatim as we were talking last time. The others took a little word tweak or two. So I won't belabor this. I think I'll just open it up to kind of a twofold question. Do these look on target? And are there any other refinements that the committee would like? So that's an open set of questions to the committee. Jean, go ahead.
I had a note in here to add in the evaluation and goals, something about Sherwood's heritage and pattern of growth to preserve the small town feel. And okay, I see. That's how it got.
Yeah, we captured it right here.
Okay, just added it to another area. I'm trying to flip between two packets to see if it
includes... And there was a little judgment as to where words exactly would go, but we did find a place for it.
And in the evaluation criteria, I would include view corridors and separation from neighboring cities to help make Sherwood's identity unique.
Okay, bear with me while I write the old-fashioned way here.
Other than that, I think everything else was good. Thank you.
And I'm going to circle back to you just for one part of that phrase, view corridors and separation of cities to make something Sherwood unique.
Our identity or the
Sherwood's identity unique.
Correct. Or something more intelligent than what I just put together on the fly.
Right.
I wouldn't need to, my opinion, I wouldn't need to see this again to approve it. Your staff and crew do a great job of capturing what we're trying to say. But
okay,
one of the things came out in our comprehensive plan update was how Sherwood's natural barriers and the separations allow us to be a unique community within the metro area. We're separated by those natural barriers, and preserving that's really important.
Okay. Okay. Kennedy, please.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, I think the vision statement and then the goals and objectives evaluation criteria kind of meets what we were discussing at our last meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Any other thoughts from anybody? Not seeing any. Okay. So with the addition that we will find the appropriate phrasing and location for the view corridors and separation of cities to make Sherwood's identity unique as an add. Do we have consensus to move this forward as the vision goals and evaluation criteria? A hand up can do it, either electronic or. Okay. Seeing thumbs up and hands up. Not seeing, hearing anything and object. Okay. All right. Then we have consensus on that. And just a look ahead, we have a period of outreach to the community coming up in the next month and a half. And so this is part of the body of work that would be shared with everybody. Okay, very good. Good job on that. Let's move ahead to the plan concepts. And bear with me while I scroll some pages. And make a little adjustment in my screen. Okay. Is the map large enough for you to read? Okay. All right. Just, let me pop it up just a little bit more. So our first topic is livable and connected streets. And this is basically the street plan, street concept plan. And we made this first page in the documents in your packet, picking up on the thread of discussion last time, that it's really important that we integrate Sherwood West with Sherwood. And maybe if you're 40 years out, you don't even know the difference between the two. It has really grown together and there's a strong integration. So streets are part of that. And we started with making this map of destinations in the community that we're sort of watching to connect and integrate with. And it's not exhausted. I'm sure there are more things we put here, but that's the thinking behind this first page. So the next page in this document is one of two options for the street plan. And the street plan in our context is concept level. There will be some refinements as the city moves ahead and adopts things into the comprehensive plan. That is a subsequent step, but we're trying to get it pointed in the right direction, right balance of vision and implementation at this level. So I wanted to walk you through the thinking on this map, and then we'll pause and take discussion area by area. Starting with the north, our mixed employment discussions to date have identified the potential for a fairly robust area, 200 plus acres of potential mixed employment. So to serve those lands, we've put in what I would call just a very basic road system. West of Elwart, the connection down from Shoal Sherwood, the connection over from Roy Rogers, segments the area into about 40-acre blocks. That is a convenient planning tool for light industrial types of uses, because users can put two of them together and build something that's 80 acres, start out with 40 acres that they've got 10 that they know what they do with, but 30 more are future, and it's modular in that sense. And then the idea behind the road framework that is on the west side of Elwert is that we make a north-south continuous route that parallels Elwert and connects to the other pieces. So if you're circulating in this area in the future, you own a business over on the west side of Elwert, but you've got a parts supplier over on the east side, or maybe you're just going to lunch. That kind of local circulation doesn't have to rely on the Elwert, Shoals, Sherwood, or Roy Rogers system. You always have an option. And of course, that provides resiliency for emergency service providers and so on. So that's the basic thinking. We did have some feedback from the Technical Advisory Committee that was very helpful. We need to think about what kind of intersection improvement would be done here about 1,000 feet south of the Shoals Sherwood Roy Rogers intersection, and whether that implies that this ought to be a little bit further south. I think we're going to refine and learn some things as we go ahead. So consider this a starting point. And then the other good comment we had was we want to be mindful of not creating little remnant pieces. So maybe this triangle up here, we can locate the intersection a little differently to minimize that. I think what I'll do is I'll just go through the whole street plan and try and summarize the thinking quickly, and then we can get your thoughts and comments on it. In the central area of the plan, the big move in this option is to realign Elwert to cross Chicken Creek, meet a roundabout, and then continue north as it's shown. And then that sets up a realignment of Edie Road. Now, many of you were probably involved in the thinking about this in the preliminary concept plan. This is not a new idea. This is our refinement of it. But the rationale behind even looking at this is that, as we all know, the intersection of Elwert and Edie needs a lot of improvement. It's too low, it's floodable, it has natural resources kind of right up close to it. It's a fairly high use area. And so the previous work looked at this in some depth and created this alignment alternative as a way to not only make those improvements, fix the problems, but also be able to do them without shutting down this area while a fairly significant construction project would go on. Sometimes that's just the reality of a capital improvement, that it's not very constructible unless you've got an alternative route. So for all of those reasons, the realignment was created as part of the previous work. We think it's a good idea. We've refined it a little bit here and carried it into this concept. Just a note on Eastview and over in Edie, this is just a fairly use existing roads, but to follow the contours to create a loop that goes like so. Okay, southern half of the plan. So with Edie realigned and down to about the midpoint of Sherwood West, then the important A to B connections are Hadley extension to points south. So from Hadley over to a point at where we're outside the resource area of Chicken Creek, and then carry south so that these lands just to the west of the high school, just to the south of Kruger, on down to our employment areas in the south, all have a fairly logical north-south connection. The placement of this took some study, and we ended up drawing this so that there would be what I'll call sort of the low road or the mid-slope road, And then a second route that parallels it, which is more following the crest line or the ridge line up higher on the hill. That gives pretty good coverage for land development to happen in between. And it provides the beginning of a good connected system that has some resiliency and redundancy in it. There's multiple ways to get north and south. Discussions with the TAC today, the chief was very supportive of that line of thinking. And we think dimensionally on the plan, having two north-south roads paralleling from basically Haiti on down past Kruger, past Goose Creek, all the way to Chapman. Two other things to mention, or one big one actually. So there's a note here about the Chapman Brookman interchange, or intersection or interchange, whatever it turns out to be. That's really its own focus area of study. We don't have suggested solutions for it, and the city team is working on ways to look at that in more depth and bring back some thinking and some options for your discussion in future meetings. But for the rest of the framework, this is where we are as a first draft of the plan. And maybe I'll go all the way back to the beginning of my description, is that what this really is an update and refinement of the preliminary concept plan, road connectivity. Okay, that's a lot to drink in. Thank you for your attention. Let's go ahead and take comments, and maybe to keep us organized, we start in the north, everything north of Chicken Creek. What comments or questions might you have about that area? Tim, go ahead, please.
I'll jump in since everyone else is, I'm sure, thinking of awesome questions. One of the things that we've been talking about as a city for a long time, even leading up to this planning process, was offloading cut-through traffic out of Yamhill County to the work centers in Hillsborough west of Elwert, up through Chapman, and working with the county to potentially have a new feeder road, kind of in taking all the traffic out of our neighborhoods. Ideally, the main roads kind of surround our neighborhoods, and we're not forcing cut-through traffic and truck traffic and farm traffic, through our neighborhoods and around our schools. And I'd really like to see the concept plan call that out and show it, because it's more ammunition as we work with the county on some of these ideas.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And just to sort of build that a little bit, that would basically be some new facility, new alignment that's off to the west.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've had some preliminary conversations with the county about it. We even talked about putting a underpass or overpass down at Brookman and Chapman to facilitate it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, thinking 20, 30 years out, but calling it out in our concept plan helps us drive those conversations with the county and the state.
Great. Okay.
And that's just my thought, but I'd love to hear what other people on the committee think about that as well.
Let's stay on that idea. Others on the committee, your thoughts, questions on that suggestion? Pops, please.
Yeah, I do. I just want to piggyback what Tim was talking about. First of all, Tim, you hit where I was going with, because Brookman brought that up, which has been my number one concern through this whole process, has been that north-south. And interestingly enough, that was on my mind. Tim brought it up. It's hard for me to get comfortable with either plan without knowing still that there's a larger picture going on here that diverts this north-south Hillsborough, Yamhill traffic that has me so concerned about the whole overall that we're talking about. So Tim, I guess you probably answered. I don't know if that was a question or a statement. I just know that that's been, a concern of mine, and it's highlighted here quite well. Either choice still has me concerned. I'll go off mic.
Okay. Hey, and I should do a check-in. I was reading from the screen labels. Should I go with Pops or Brian?
I'll change it to Brian. Brian for
Yeah.
this meeting is better. My apologies on that.
Yeah,
I
no
didn't even
worries.
look at it. Well, I'm not going to apologize for my name.
Yeah. Okay, Doug,
But-
something on this topic, perhaps?
Yeah, so I certainly, I know those of us on council have been urging the city to work with the county on this. Of course, a lot of this is at least somewhat outside of our control because it's a county facility, and obviously any of the lands to the west are also county. I guess my biggest question is this the right venue and vehicle to push that conversation or not? I don't know the answer to that, but it's one of the reasons I do really like this alternative as opposed to the other one is it at least envisions this realigned Elwert Road that isn't this super highway running in a straight line down the center of the neighborhood. So I think this concept is the one I approve because I think hopefully it will kind of go along with and foster the conversation with the county around how do we relocate that traffic to more of a bypass or something.
Okay. Tim, did you have another?
Oh, I just wanted to echo something that Doug said there, that we're not going to be able to drive a project to relocate Elwert out of this meeting. He's absolutely right. But to get those kind of projects done, you have to have it in a plan somewhere. And when the opportunities arise, so it's just more ammo that we're serious about it when we're working with the county. It's in our concept plan that we've identified for the area. We'll probably have elements of this that are in our TSP, going forward, which is outside this process. It's just we've got to build the case. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with that.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's open it back up. And I don't think we need to go area by area. Let's just take any comments or questions on the street layout that folks have.
I'll go ahead and add a couple things here. I definitely do also agree that the option one with the realignment of Elwert is ideal. I had another concern about that, the intersection at Handley and Elwert and what that will look like. I'm assuming that are the little circles roundabouts? Is that a potential roundabout situation?
The little circles are roundabouts.
Okay.
And a roundabout at Handley and Elwert, I think, is an option. We haven't really kind of put any thought into it yet. My colleague, Carl Springer, is in the meeting. He's with DKS, our transportation firm. Carl, are you still with us? There you are.
Yeah, I'm here, Joe.
So what's your take on, as we look at intersection types, is a roundabout at Handley and Elwert a candidate?
I believe so. I mean, it usually comes down to a combination of the flows on the different streets plus the terrain in that area. So, one of the comments made at the TAC meeting earlier today was making sure you provide a large enough radius to get emergency vehicles through and those kinds of things. So it wouldn't necessarily be a smaller roundabout, but I would think we'd want to continue to think about that as an option there.
Okay. And
Yeah,
Emily, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm not necessarily in favor of, a string of roundabouts because it tends to, it extremely slows things down, maybe even more than anybody really wants. But that particular intersection at Handley and Elwert is already very dangerous. Trying to pull out because of the visibility coming over the hill from the south, direct south to north, is super dangerous. So to increase crossing traffic there, it would definitely major consideration for safety.
One of the things also about that location is that of all these intersections, it's probably one of our best ones for pedestrian connectivity from west to east and east to west. And there are a few trade-offs for pedestrian movements that come with roundabouts. They're not deal killers, but they are consideration. So Okay, good comment. What else? Anything else on the street plan here? Let's go up to Kennedy and then Jean.
Oh, so Joe, I guess my question was that I was on the first Sherwood West Planning Committee, and obviously the crossing of Chicken Creek and fixing the Elworth Edie Road problem. Those are thorny issues. Then they're thorny issues now. I guess my question is, one of the things back then was the cost of fixing those. So what's been presented here, are those the most cost-effective ways to solve these issues, or kind of what thought process went in on the cost issue?
Mm-hmm. The cost information we have so far is what was developed as part of the preliminary concept plan. When I read it now about a month ago, but when I read it, I was surprised actually at the kind of the thoughtful nature of it. And it actually concluded that this realignment was less costly than the option 2. And the reason has to do with the challenges at existing Edie Elworth are so significant that it adds a lot of cost to rebuild there.
Right.
Now, I'm doing a little bit of that from memory, but for the realignment itself, this option was the better performer.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Jean, and then we'll go over to, is it Mara or Mare? Mara. Mare. Okay, sorry. All right, Jean first.
A quick question and then maybe more complicated question. The quick one is the 2 north-south that are in the southern half of the project, the distance between those 2 roads, is that about a half a mile? I'm trying to.
No. It's about, I made notes earlier on that. Hold on a sec.
Just to see if
it's about 1,000 feet.
Okay, so it would create walkable neighborhoods within that. That's another.
Yes.
It's another piece to the comprehensive plan, is that within large roadways, we create walkable neighborhoods, which leads me to the second question. The north-south route that Councilor Scott and Rosner were talking about, I just want clarification. Are we looking towards going from Brookman Chapman up that the lower road, not the Ridgeline Road, but the Valley Road, all the way up through to Elworth as kind of a bypass to divert traffic off of the Elworth Road? And if so, maybe we need to make that road wider in the diagram, thicker line, and then put a roundabout at Handley and that new road, because I would see that as one that you'd want traffic moving without having to worry about adding lights in the future.
I don't think the road that we are envisioning is depicted on here at all.
Okay, so it would be outside the UGB then, and outside the Sherwood West area?
I would add, I think depending on, the Brookman realignment where it crosses 99, where the note there is about the staff, part of the relook there is actually moving that a little bit north as an option. So it could end up that curves through the southern end, maybe creating a employment zone on the south side of it. But to Councilor Scott's point, ideally it would skim the edge of the rural reserve there and tie back in at Elworth, probably just south of the employment lands back up there. If that would make sense. My ideal is to keep that through traffic out of our neighborhoods. Right.
I think that just looking at the terrain and previous, I was wondering if that's possible. That's why I'm just trying to figure out through terrain if we're going to set ourselves up for that's going to be built or not. Thank you.
Mayor, please.
I was just curious with the thought about having a roundabout in another location up at Shoals, Sherwood, and LeBeau at that intersection of Elwood. Is that a possibility too, to keep that traffic flowing, or is that a problem?
Carl, I'll ask you to add on, but I would say all options are on the table for up there because it's such a complicated situation that definitely needs some fixing, and so a roundabout would be one of the candidates. Do you agree, Carl?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I know the county's had good success at locations like that. It's just that they haven't really come to a long-term solution at that point yet. They've done some kind of short-term things, but there's definitely more thinking to be done there. But I would agree that a roundabout would be an option to consider there.
Okay. Doug, did you have another comment?
Yeah, it was more of a question around, is the vision that sorry, I can't read it, East View Road, right on the left there that comes, is the vision that would continue south, or is it just going to dead end there at the Chicken Creek?
Our sense is that a dead end is probably the best choice. There is, it would not be of the traffic flow that would really merit the crossing, and the land goes back uphill pretty significantly on the south side of Chicken Creek.
Okay.
So, and the area south of Chicken Creek can be well served by the Haiti Kruger kind of set of framework down there.
Yeah, it just feels like we're putting a lot of stress on the roundabout there at, well, it's not named. I guess the realigned intersection of Edie and Elwert there, where we have a roundabout, and then potentially even that. Anyway, yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. Great comments on this. Any last ones? Let me move ahead to the other option. There isn't much that's new on it, and I think you've sort of covered your own preference and thinking. But the other option is illustrated on this graphic. The local roads respond to it, and that's what it is. The rest of the system is basically the same. Okay. Let's go Mayor, and then Doug, if you have another one, we'll go back to you.
So looking at this map, is the arrow that crosses over Elwert that looks like it's in the new industrial portion, is that Conselman, or what road is that is going across there where it says West Fork Chicken Creek?
Let me dial in real quickly. West Fork of Chicken Creek.
Yeah, that arrow right there, right where your cursor is right now. Is that Conselman?
I'm gonna need help on the road name. There is an existing right of way in that location.
I believe it is, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you.
Doug, did you have a comment on this option?
Only that I greatly prefer the first option.
Okay. I'm seeing some head nods. Is that a pretty pervasive point of view of the committee? Yeah, okay. I think for purposes of sharing our work with the community, we'll continue to show both options. But we can certainly note that there's a preference towards option one at this point.
Yeah, I would just really worry about safety in this option.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go Jean and Tim.
And so in this area, besides the safety on this option too, I think as we present it to the public going forward, the understanding that the cost numbers are old, but just getting a pulse of where the cost variations are, that option one, at least an initial study, it appears to be less expensive. If that's true case, would be important as we go through the process, so the public understands not only is it potentially safer, it's more aesthetically pleasing as we incorporate landform into our process.
Mhm.
We're being fiscally responsible also.
Got it. Okay. Tim?
Yeah, Gene brought up a really good point about terrain and relocating cut through traffic west. Would it be possible to just take a very quick look at terrain and what a potential alignment would look like if we were to try to do that?
And you're referring back to the, I'm not sure what to call it, bypass for lack of a better term.
Exactly, you know, and with just the general idea of trying to keep the cut through or bypass traffic out of our neighborhoods, around the neighborhoods, and tie it back in the industrial zoned areas on
Yeah.
the north side. It'd be interesting to see what that would look like.
Erica, could you weigh in on that? I think you and Bob Galati had discussed that he was going to do some sketch level work
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, so Tim, just to let you know that Bob Galati and I have spoke about this, and we're going to do some reconnaissance work to see possibly what that could look like, and where those future roads could go to alleviate that cut through traffic through our Sherwood neighborhoods.
Yeah, and it might help inform some of the details of this road layout as well. So that's awesome.
Great.
I appreciate you guys having a conversation.
Okay. Okay. Emily.
I just wanted to add to what Gene said about when we're presenting both of the options to the public and ensuring that people know about the cost differences, assumed cost differences based on the old numbers, but that also it in what appears to me that knowing that intersection the way it is now, in order to make it more robust, it would significantly affect the wetlands there and all of that, the foliage and the wildlife and everything. And it seems like the realignment appears to affect even less, have less of an impact on the natural flow of things there. So
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that the rest of the people know that.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. I overlooked a good comment we got from the Technical Advisory Committee that at this early concept stage, this is the time to be discussing these trade-offs with the key state and federal permitting agencies, because they will be in the mix in the future. And specifically, it's Department of State Lands at the Oregon level and the Army Corps of Engineers for fill and removal and flood considerations. Anyway, we captured that as it's sort of an action item moving forward. Okay. Okay, to move on to our next topic, the Elwood design.
Oh, can I mention one more thing, Joe?
Yes.
Came out of our TAC meeting this afternoon in regards to roadway design. And we talked about this before at our last meeting, is that, when we do design these roadways in these natural areas, that we want to be really concerned with the way they function with that system. So, maybe we have, a large box culvert of some type, that, creates, an access way for, animals, and also, maybe people through the trail system.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes a bridge is as much as is the same cost as a large box culvert, and actually provides a place for people to go and view the creek, and it's kind of a mini destination. Okay, moving on to another transportation topic. We have put some thought into the design concepts for Elwood, and the work here started with just some reminders on the existing setting that is out there. So that's what this page of photos is all about. And then particularly at the CAC level, but really in multiple conversations, there has been references to sunset as an example of a fairly successful street. I mean, Woodhaven and surrounding areas are successful on many levels. But what we've heard is that it's pleasant, that people feel safe about their kids navigating this area, whether it's near Sunset or other streets. And so we said, let's dive in and see what are the design elements that we can learn from. Maybe we won't copy those, but we can provide an L-word version of some of the qualities. Hence this collection of images. So the buffered sidewalks, the crossings. It was pointed out that as a school crossing, maybe in today's environment, you would do something even more robust than just the stripes. Here, you might do a pedestrian activated kind of system. The path connections are good. Clearly, the plantings and the landscaping is very high quality with the planted median. And my own observation is the neighborhood park that is on the north side of Sunset is really a beautiful edge along that portion of the street. And then the 3-rail wood fence is kind of a signature consistent element. So let me stop there and pose the question, invite your knowledge of Sunset. What do you agree? Is it a good, successful model? What are the parts that make it so? And is there maybe another precedent that we want to learn from? Let's just do maybe 5 minutes of discussion on that. It sure shows up nice in the photographs, I'll say that.
There's not much to say because it's beautiful.
Yeah. Kennedy, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. I think that's a great comparative. And I can't tell you how many people out of the area who I know who come through Sunset absolutely love it. So I would say that's a great benchmark or parallel for us on that.
Okay. Brian?
Yeah, I would agree for sure. I think a lot of that can be emulated and mirrored on the west side. I think that especially if you have with the tree-lined streets and how they sort of reflect the seasons, that's something I always look forward to. You always know what season it is just by looking up at the tree leaves. And the curvature for first option that we were looking at with regards to the Elwert Edie connection, it will really allow for that road to more meander instead of that straightaway. As you can see by the park, where you have a straightaway, it's not as aesthetically as beautiful as where you have the curvature and the island there. So I think that could be emulated, and it would do definitely justice to our goal of integrating the west side into what we have going on across 29.
Okay. Emily?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the grass strip along the street and the distance of the sidewalk from the street makes it so inviting for all, for families and walking and all of that. You never are worried about a car coming too fast around a corner or anything. That extra buffer is just really fantastic.
It's interesting that the grass strip is actually slightly mounded from curb to sidewalk, which gives you just that kind of extra psychological comfort. Okay. Any others before we move on to looking at Sunset or Elwert itself?
Like Brian has his hand up.
Brian, another thought?
I apologize. I forgot to lower my hand.
No worries.
All the comments everyone made were just absolutely spot on. I think it's important that as we grow the west side of Sherwood, that it has a similar look and feel to the Sunset in this area. So I agree with all those comments. One thing I would add too is when we look at all the right of way that we allocate for these roads, we need to be thinking longer term even than that. So we don't have what's going to happen here on Roy Rogers near the intersection of Safeway there, where that's a county road and they're taking it to 4 lanes. So we're going to lose a lot of that because there's not enough right of way to the private properties. So as we think about the zoning and all that, we need to make sure that we're allowing for enough right of way for future growth if it needs to go to 4 lanes or something like that, so we don't lose that character.
Okay. With all of that, let's move ahead to a couple design ideas then for Elwood itself. How might we apply some of these things we like? I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. So there we go. So what we've done is picked up on those ideas, and it seemed to imply sort of a segmentation of Elwood from Highway 99 all the way up to Sherwood. And even though there are just sort of some distinctive characters in those segments, the continuity from one end to the other would be part of the design idea. But it's varying a little bit in its context. So I'll start from south and go north. At the high school end, obviously, the west edge of the street is built. The east edge of the street needs to be completed. But what we have is the beginning of a multi-use path in that vicinity that can be continued north. And then from Haiti to the roundabout, we have labeled what we've called here a residential boulevard. So that section would be something like the imagery that we just saw for Sunset. It would probably be the closest comparable out of these various sections. As highly pedestrian oriented as we can make it, still carrying its function of moving traffic, but with pedestrian safety as a priority. The crossing of the creek can take a little bit different form. The plantings can be natural. Whatever structure is used for the actual creek crossing can be a bit of a community destination, little viewing platform of some sort, maybe an environmental education opportunity. We did get some caution in the TAC about narrowing the right of way through there, that in terms of operations and maintenance, the city still needs to take care of it, and we can make it natural friendly, but it doesn't necessarily have to neck down at that point. And then more residential boulevard, another green crossing at the west fork of Chicken Creek. And then at the northern end, we'd be looking to see how we can tailor it to serve the employment needs of that area. Maybe not much changes. For truck movements, you have to be careful of the medians. So we might want a little bit more continuity of the center turn lane to accommodate larger vehicles. So there would be some nod to the employment area, and we've called it an employment area parkway, where it has a distinctive tree character, so you know you're there. The city's visual corridor design is integrated with it, and you can see the other parcels along there. It wouldn't have as many driveways. In fact, the whole segment of Elwood would probably be fairly managed for access. So this is kind of the big idea going here, is that we would carry forward continuity of Sunset Boulevard-like design, but tailor it to the context of these various portions of Elwood. So let me stop there and open it up to your thoughts on those ideas. Jean, let's start with you.
I would only agree with what the TAC was saying about not narrowing the bridges, especially because the cost of having to go through BLS and core to get the first bridge through, I would hate to go back through and have to widen it. So if we build it to build it to the width capacity, even if we, initially buffer it with tree plantings and then make it so they could be removed so we don't lose, the width of the bridge at the beginning should be as wide as it needs to be for a 40-year plan or a 50-year plan.
Okay, good. I'm seeing a couple of head nods to that. Other thoughts on these design concepts?
There isn't a whole lot to say because I really think you guys practically nailed it with this. I love that carrying the same kind of the white fence throughout, right, from top to bottom, and then really connecting up to Sunset. That's just a great connectivity of everything, tying everything together, and the tree patterns and all the things. So I just say really, really well done.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Jean, back to you for a moment.
Sorry, that was a hand clap. I was
Oh,
agreeing.
a hand clap. Gotcha. Oh, that's it. I see it.
I think you
Okay.
guys nailed it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Good. That means we get to continue to use all those beautiful pictures of sunset. Okay. Well, perfectly fine to move on then if we want to go to our next topic. Okay. So for this next one,
Sorry, I do have another topic about transport. It wasn't about Elward in general, but it was about transportation and streets.
yes.
And
go
it may
ahead,
have been
please.
touched on up front, but I think one of the challenges we're seeing in some of our existing neighborhoods is parking, street parking in particular, right? So the street standard being one that either doesn't allow parking on both sides, or so it's one side only, or it is both sides, but it's really not quite wide enough to be both sides. So you have this slalom effect where everybody's got to wait down the block for the car coming at you to make it through the slaloms, and then you can take your turn. And it feels like there's an opportunity, as we go into Sherwood West on these other streets not named Elwert, that we make sure we account for right sizing those roads given HB 2001 potential ramifications, given just existing, the way our parking situation is being stressed and will continue to be stressed even more. We want to make sure we account for that in those road designs.
Okay. Thank you.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That was the big bullet point I was going to add to great neighborhoods, was adequate parking.
And that's adequate on-street parking as well as off-street.
We will potentially with HB 2001 only be allowed to look at on-street parking as a criteria in some instances.
I'm aware. Yeah.
Yes.
We've just finished the package for Wilsonville.
So you know how painfully
Yeah.
awkward it's going to be.
Okay, so let's then move on to great neighborhoods. And not only is that a good segue, but your comment earlier, Jean, about walkable neighborhoods. We actually put together this great neighborhoods material in tandem with the street plan. So we were kind of going back and forth and doing them together. So page 1, like the other documents, is introductory about principles and the opportunity for great neighborhoods, and an extension of Sherwood's neighborhoods. So let's go to the first diagram. We made a study. We asked ourselves, where are the walkable units of land within Sherwood West, considering natural features, existing development like the high school, topography, and if you can see in the corner there's a little quarter-mile circle of what is a comfortable 5 to 10 minute walk distance. For me nowadays, that's getting to be more of a 10-minute walk, but it's a good rule of thumb to apply to these areas. And what that generated was this map right here. So the purple areas are obviously the employment areas. They'll have their own walkability within them. But each area is, some of them are very intuitive, like this is basically what's between Elwert and West Fork of Chicken Creek. Same thing with this lobe of land right here. It's sort of the mirror image of the existing built neighborhood north of Edie. The Eddy Road to Eastview area feels when you're out there like one area. It does have some topographic change. But I think if the street was done as we drew, that would follow the contour down low from the lower part of Eastview over to Edie, and you anchor it with a neighborhood park or two, that is a cohesive walkable area. Then there's the area that is north of Haiti and west of Handley. This is probably the largest continuous walkable area in the study area. It's almost a perfect quarter mile from center to edge. Most of it flat, although there are some slopes as you go down towards the creek. What's interesting about this area is if you lived in this area down the road, you'd never be more than 1 or 2 or 3 blocks away from some natural area or from some destination like the sports fields, which is a pretty interesting possibility. So then we get to the southern sort of ridgeline and slopes from Haiti south. And our sense was, this is not as intuitive, but with a couple of judgment calls, our sense was that the east-facing slope that is just west of the high school is probably a walkable area that you can identify. It's kind of a long way to go if you go from the bottom of it all the way up to the ridge line. Possible if you're young and hardy, but we thought that there was more of a continuity of the higher elevation areas. So here's 2 that we drew, and then a long one with these west-facing views. And the drainage is split at the top there. And then you've got the east views here. So one might draw these maybe a little bit different for a couple of edges. But the point is that there's very good potential for walkable units of land that we can then locate parks. We can think about our residential types and so on within this framework. So let me take this one more map further, and then we can have some discussion. We went from this map to the next one, where we said, okay, if that's where we think people will walk, how might we anchor parks? And we have to think about future schools and green spaces to really enhance that, to kind of really get it to sing. And so we came up with this diagram. I'll come back to the employment area in the north, but we basically located kind of 1 park per area. And there's a few judgment calls mixed in with this, but something next to Chicken Creek that would be the main neighborhood park for the Edie Road area in Eastview. Maybe 2 neighborhood parks serving the Hadley extension, and as you move towards the upper slopes. And then you can see the other parks that are located kind of distributed. We have not tested this for park planning standards and kind of the math of the acreage, but really just taken more of a community form and quality of life kind of take on it to begin with. Last piece of this line work is the trails. So we've talked about the Chicken Creek Greenway Trail, like so. You can see how that links parks, which came up in your discussions last time. You all had the idea for another Chicken Creek Trail on the north side, same thing. It would be the linkage between green spaces. And then multi-use path, or perhaps some special sidewalk treatment that would tie together these areas in the south. So this is taking the neighborhood framework and trying to fold in parks, schools, and green spaces with it. a note about the employment area in the north. Employment areas are where people spend a lot of time during their workday. Now that changes somewhat with the post-COVID era, but for the amount of development that'll be up in this area, providing some trails to run on, some loops to follow on, a way to get down to the neighborhood park to have your lunch before you go back up to the office for a while. All of those things are potential. So we have folded that into the concept here. Okay, so a lot of description, but that's that. Let's pause there, and I'll stay on this map. What comments or questions or ideas came to mind as you looked at this material? Doug.
Apologies. So this may be jumping ahead a little bit, but I do really think the thing that's first of all, I love all this. I love the way the trails connect the parks. Really great concept. The way all these things are interconnected. I will say I think what's missing here to me is the large park, the really big community park on the west side of the highway. I think we have to figure out a way to get that in.
Okay.
Snyder Park West.
Can I pause there for a moment, because we're sort of on the educational ladder of that. Has there been an identified need for another community scale park in Sherwood?
I believe it's in our Parks and Rec master plan that we just passed.
Okay.
Am I correct on that, Erica?
Yes, so we have identified, or at least we have a community goal or a vision for another large park, hopefully within the Sherwood West area.
Okay.
And I think if you talk to people who live in Sherwood West, they would say that. I think we've heard that from our citizens over there loud and clear many times, that they feel kind of left out because they got to get in a car and drive across town to go to Snyder, for that type of park.
Gotcha. Okay. That is a fun element to add. Let's start with Mayor and then go to Emily.
One of the things that I would really love to see is maybe a little bit of the opportunity to have some kind of dining experience that would be along the creek area. Seems like we're kind of missing out on being able to draw people towards nature to be able to enjoy a meal. I don't know if that's a possibility. I do agree with the city park being a larger feature over on the west side as well.
Okay. Emily?
Same with the larger park. I counted 8 or 9 little parks in here, which are wonderful, but they really serve a very small amount of our community. And as our kids grow, they need more space. They don't need the little tiny playgrounds. They need some open space, like a Memorial Park in Wilsonville, or even a Juergens Park or Discovery Park, any of those kinds of just larger scale options.
Gotcha. Okay. Tim?
Those 2 comments were spot on, and just to expand on Mayor's comment, on the south side of that industrial area to the north along the creek corridor, there might be an opportunity there for some commercial space to encourage restaurants and stuff along the stream corridor there. And then my other comment on the trail system, you have a little park north of the high school with the trail connecting to it. It would be great to have that trail continue all the way to the high school there, because that gives kids a walk zone that keeps them off Elward, as they're coming out of all those neighborhoods up there, and they're not having to go way around, or worst case, cut through people's yards.
Got it. Yeah, they'll find their own way there. Okay. Mayor is supporting that idea. Other comments on either parks or trail connections, green space connections? Jim.
This is less about parks, but more about your question there about will a school be located in Sherwood West? And Even though we have capacity today, when we're talking about adding this many homes in that area, we will certainly need to be looking at how we expand our capacity in that Sherwood West area. So I have that. And then depending on how the crossing there along Roy Rogers would be, it might help solve some of the problems of the lack of park on the north side of Roy Rogers. If there was a park up at that end in that industrial area, which would be nice for those folks who live there.
Yep. Okay. And back to the school for a moment. What's your sense? Would it be elementary school or middle?
Hard to say. It would probably depend just on how many students, which is really a direct factor of how many homes are going to go in that area.
Okay.
So our uptake is about 1 student per home in single family dwelling units, and in multifamily dwelling units, about 0.2.
Okay.
I believe
We'll,
the Sherwood average overall is like 0.75, if I remember right.
Well, again, single family dwelling, it's just like 0.97, and multifamily dwelling units, so apartments and those kinds of homes, it's 0.22-ish.
mhm.
So
Okay.
in our current mode of housing, it doesn't take a lot of homes to create a need for another grade school or something like that. So
We are very fortunate today to have capacity, but that capacity could be filled fairly quickly with a lot of new homes.
Right. Okay.
Does the current capacity include all of the Brookman development?
Yeah, have we planned for that? Yeah, we can absorb that growth across all buildings. But at some point, even that nice big new high school will be pushing its limits.
And Jim,
Okay.
can you remind the group and me what sort of, for elementary school, the average, like the desirable capacity might be, so that we kind of know how many students you're talking about for an elementary school and a middle school?
It just depends on the size of the building. So we have buildings right now with a capacity on the smaller end of a little over 400 up to the Ridges being, now that it's combined the middle school and the elementary school into one larger elementary, the capacity there is closer to 900 or so. And then our middle school, the capacity is about 1,500, and the high school in phase 1 is 2,000, with the core capacity, meaning the cafeteria, gymnasium, those kinds of places, built for 2,400, with the belief that at some point we'll add an additional 400, what I would call academic spaces. So classrooms for an additional 400 students. So pre-planning for that growth when we built the building.
Okay. Before we get to next comment, just a footnote on our work plan, next steps. We're at a good threshold to be talking about this, because with streets, parks, neighborhood form, all of the things that we've looked at so far, employment, sort of in parallel when we're working with the community, we'll be doing the first residential land use diagrams for you to discuss. So we can make some estimates about how many homes, share that with you, Jim, and then kind of feed that back with what you think the school needs are.
That would be great.
Okay, super. Jean, I think we're over to you.
Thank you. I'm completely changing topic. I just don't want to lose. Is the document that we're looking at going to be presented and carried forward through the process, and specifically the first page that talks about great neighborhoods and the principles that are on there? And I think it's your previous page.
Yes.
I want to add, I think one of the principles we've hear at every meeting that we ever have, that adequate parking has to be a principle and a priority when we go forward. So if we don't add it in the section before, I was thinking this was an appropriate place to make sure that our neighborhoods have adequate parking.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll be doing a few tune-ups to these documents as we share them to reflect your comments here, but basically we're intending to carry these forward and share them with the community. Emily?
The last meeting, it was brought up about the pipeline, and I didn't see that indicated anywhere on the maps at this point. I didn't know when that was going to be on there and how that would affect any of this.
So we have mapped it and looked at it. We didn't include it on these actual drawings. But I frankly have a note to myself now to circle back to that and make sure that we're okay with all of these various diagrams. We haven't done a comprehensive look at that, but we started with it before we drew each of these. So thank you for the reminder. Okay. Okay, so it sounds like we're on the right track with walkability, drawings, ideas for parks and connections. We will add in a more positive note about adding in a community park as a next stage of this. The rest of this material was just informational. As I mentioned a moment ago, our next step moving ahead will be to start to think about residential types and locations and densities. So we did a compilation of quite a range of housing types here, trying to use as many of the photos from your own middle housing project as we could fit in. And our mode between now and when we meet again, it's either late October or November, we'll bring back options for how we mix these various residential types into the plan. So my question for this discussion is, are there any comments that you have design-wise or otherwise about the housing imagery and the housing types that we're thinking about for Sherwood West? Jean, let's start with you and then we'll go to Doug.
Has Metro weighed in, or I don't know if DLCD or whoever would be looking at this plan at what our overall density requirements are going to be for the area?
Erica?
So Metro hasn't weighed in on the overall density of this plan. They, in the last go around in the legislative ask in 2018, when those concept plans came into Metro just automatically used the density that was actually proposed in those plans to how those developments move forward. So that was, Hillsborough, River Terrace, and whatnot.
Do you know what those densities?
I don't know what they were off the top of my head, but I can definitely go back and find that information and put it out to the committee.
Yeah, I know what they are. And so South Cooper Mountain, what you're seeing under construction today averages out to about 13 units per acre. And the River Terrace development that has been done to date is somewhere closer to 11. The new portions, what's called River Terrace West, they're actually looking higher. I don't know what their number is, but when I spoke with them a while ago now, 12 months ago, they were going into it thinking they were going to do 20 plus units per acre in that area. Frog Pond in Wilsonville is more down in the 11 units per acre kind of range, but the new lens of middle housing and their own strategic housing plan will look at some alternatives to that. That's a slate of numbers for you.
A lot higher than what we look at in Sherwood right now.
Yeah. Any comments on housing or densities or arrangements of residential use? Mayor?
Can you remind me like what Woodhaven was rated at for the density?
Let's check that and circle back. I was actually working for the design firm when it was designed, and going way back in memory, I think it's more in the 6 to 8
That's what I was thinking.
per acre kind of. It does not have a
That's
lot
right.
of multifamily. There's very little attached, which is different from today. Master plan communities today will have more attached because the market is there, one, but also as a way to help pay for infrastructure.
Sherwood's overall density average is right at 8 per acre, correct, Erica?
Yes, I actually think it's 8.2, just a little bit higher than 8.
And that includes the apartments that we have in town, so it gives you perspective.
Yeah.
And just for a little context for everyone, if we're looking at 10 to 11 per acre with 400 buildable acres, and the student numbers that Jim brought up, you can do the math. It's a lot.
Right. Yeah, and our buildable acreage will go down a little bit for consideration of a community level park and acreage for a school. It might be in the realm of 30 acres for a nice sized community park. And Jim, I don't know what your elementary schools are, but 10 to 15 is probably a range. But your math is correct, Tim. So that's one of the reasons that we're going to approach this as a range of options for you when we start talking about residential part of the plan. And I think there's also a connection to what are your housing needs that your housing opportunities analysis has documented and so on. Okay. That is it for the main agenda items we have. Last call for any comments on the material we presented. Appreciate all your thoughtful ideas and questions. Okay. Then with that, I think we are up to public comment, Erica.
We are.
Yeah.
So to date, we have received 3 public comments. One public comment was included in your packet from Bill Galloway. He provided comments on the vision statement and the goals and some comments in regards to the employment areas. He also had comments in regards to our last public comment from Mark Farah in the last packet, as well as he had some questions about when in-person meetings, might start again. And he had a question about how many folks we have on our interested parties list for Sherwood. And just let you know that staff, we did have a conversation with Bill about those questions and we did answer them. Just recently, we received also a public comment from Brian Billette. I hope I got his name right. This comment was sent out to the committee as well as to the Sherwood City Council today. And he had, just some questions. Well, actually, he had his comments were that they oppose development in Sherwood West in its entirety. They live just adjacent to the boundary of Sherwood West. Mr. Bellet feels that there's areas within the current city for industrial and business developments. And then just putting the plan aside, he also commented that Edie Road really needs to be resurfaced because it is rough and pretty noisy to the neighborhood, and that the intersection of Edie and Elbert Road is very dangerous and needs immediate attention. The next public comment came from Maddie Gravel Briggs, and her comments here, once again, they are they're upset about, you know, development that is planned in Sherwood West, and believe that Sherwood needs to, you know, take care of its, you know, existing seniors and our existing community before expanding into this area.
May I ask Eric a question about the public comments?
Please.
Yes.
So are public comments coming, I guess my question is, where are people getting information about the CAC meetings? And to add to that, is there other information that would be helpful? Because some of the comments may, if they had a timeline to understand how long it takes for this area to develop, and what Metro's plan is, and then how the urban growth boundary works. I just think there's maybe a couple of resources that might help understand that we're not trying to build it today, but that it's part of a Metro 3 county plan that we have to incorporate into our community. You don't have an answer. I'm just throwing them out to say, you know, maybe there's a way we can help people who are just, I mean, if someone just came in and watched this one particular meeting, they might go, what's going on? So maybe finding resources connected and links on the page where our meeting is to help them out would be appropriate. Thanks.
Okay, I think that gets us to next steps here to wrap up. I mentioned that we'll be doing an open house in early October, and that will also launch a online open house. I'm looking for the date here, October 5th. Do I have that right?
You have that right. So we are, I think we are targeting the date of the week of October 4th for that rollout of our next online open house.
And then you all would come back together on November 3rd. So you can do a save the date for November 3rd. And our topic there will be a download from what we heard from the community, and also our first discussion of residential and plan alternatives. Anything else from anybody around the call? Okay, good meeting. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.